Princess Seraphis Velcora stood alone in the Chamber of Truth. The room was cold and white, made of the same crystal that formed her skin. Blue light moved through the walls like slow water. She had waited her whole life for this moment. Now she wished she could run away. The machine in front of her was ancient. It was older than most cities in the Empire. Every Valoran who reached maturity had to stand before it. The machine would read their blood, their bones, their very soul. It would tell them one simple thing. Could they create life? Could they continue their family line? For the Valorans, nothing else mattered. Her people had ruled 17 star systems for 10,000 years. They were beautiful and powerful. Their crystalline bodies could live for thousands of years, but something had gone wrong. Fewer and fewer children were born each generation. The great families were dying out, and so fertility became everything. Those who could bear children were treated like royalty. Those who could not were called the Hollow. They were considered already dead. The machine made a soft sound. Seraphis closed her eyes. When she opened them, she saw the result floating in the air before her. The symbols were clear. There was no mistake. She was completely infertile. She would never have children. She would never matter. Her legs felt weak. She did not fall. Princesses did not fall. The door opened behind her. Her father's chief advisor walked in. He was an old Valoran named Keth, and he had known her since she was small. She saw pity in his eyes. She hated it. "The king requests your presence," Keth said softly. Seraphis followed him through the palace halls. Servants looked away as she passed. Word traveled fast. By now, everyone knew. The third princess was hollow. She was nothing. The throne room was vast. Her father sat on a chair made of living crystal that grew from the floor. King Athean was ancient and powerful. His skin was dark blue, covered with tiny cracks that showed his age. He had ruled for 3,000 years. He had outlived 2 wives and 7 children. Only 3 daughters remained. Seraphis knelt before him. Her father said. His voice was tired. She stood but did not meet his eyes. "I have seen the results," the king said. "You understand what this means?" "Yes, father." "You will be given comfortable rooms in the outer palace. You will receive a small allowance. You will not attend court functions. You will not represent the family." He paused. "In time, people will forget you exist. This is mercy." Seraphis felt something break inside her. Not her heart. Her patience. "Father," she said, "I request a different path." The king's eyes narrowed. "You are in no position to request anything. I request to lead the diplomatic mission to the human territories." Silence filled the room. Keth made a small choking sound. The humans were new to the galactic stage. They had discovered faster than light travel only 200 years ago. They were considered primitive, short-lived, and unimportant. No serious diplomat wanted to deal with them. It was a meaningless job. King Athean studied his daughter. Then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You wish to spend your exile among animals? Very well, go play ambassador with the humans. Perhaps they will find you valuable, since they know nothing of true worth." Seraphis bowed low. "Thank you, father." She left the throne room with her head held high. She did not cry until she reached her chambers. Then she cried for a long time. 2 weeks later, her ship entered the human colony system of New Meridian. Seraphis had read everything about humans during the journey. They lived only 80 or 90 years. They were soft and breakable. They needed food and water and sleep far more than Valorans did. They could not survive in space without heavy protection. By every measure, they were weak. But there were so many of them, billions upon billions. They bred like insects. They spread across planets like water filling a cup. What they lacked in individual strength, they made up in numbers and stubbornness. Her shuttle landed in the capital city of New Meridian. The air was thick and warm and smelled of growing things. Seraphis stepped onto the landing pad and immediately felt out of place. Everything was loud. Everything moved. People of different colors and sizes walked in every direction, talking and laughing and arguing. A human man approached her. He was tall for his species, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He wore a simple military uniform. "Princess Seraphi's," he said. His voice was rough, but friendly. "I'm Commander Elias Vance. I've been assigned as your liaison. Welcome to New Meridian." She nodded stiffly. "Thank you, Commander. I look forward to productive diplomatic relations." Elias smiled. It changed his whole face. "Sure, we can do the formal stuff. But first, have you eaten? There's a great noodle place around the corner. Best food on the planet." Seraphi's blinked. No one had ever asked if she was hungry during a diplomatic meeting. "I do not require food at this time," she said. "Okay, but you're missing out." He gestured toward a vehicle. "Come on, I'll show you to your quarters. Tomorrow, we can start the official tours. Tonight, just rest. You've had a long trip." The following weeks were strange. Elias took her everywhere. He showed her hospitals where humans fought to save every life, even the lives of those who could never work again. He showed her schools where children who learned slowly were given extra help instead of being removed. He showed her families with adopted children, humans who chose to raise babies that were not their own blood. "Why do they do this?" Seraphi's asked one day. They were watching a human couple play with their adopted daughter in a park. The child is not theirs. She cannot continue their genetic line. Elias looked confused. She's their kid. They love her. That's kind of the whole point. But what is her value if she does not carry their genes? Elias turned to face her fully. Value? She's a person. She has value because she exists. Because she can grow up and do things and be happy and make other people happy. He shook his head. What does genetics have to do with anything? Seraphis did not have an answer. That night, alone in her quarters, she thought about Ilias's words. She thought about the adopted child. She thought about her father's voice when he told her she would be forgotten. For the first time in her life, she wondered if her people had been wrong about everything. She sent a message to the king. She would be extending her mission indefinitely. There was much to learn from the humans. Much more than she had expected. She did not tell him the truth. She did not tell him that for the first time in her life. She had found a place where being hollow did not make her worthless. She did not tell him that she was beginning to feel something dangerous. She was beginning to feel hope. 6 months passed on New Meridian. Seraphis learned more in those months than she had in 500 years of life on her homeworld. Elias became her constant companion. He was patient with her endless questions. He never laughed at her confusion. When she did not understand human customs, he explained them simply. When she made mistakes, he helped her fix them without judgment. One morning, he took her to a place called a retirement home. Old humans lived there, humans whose bodies were failing. They could no longer work. They could no longer care for themselves. On the Valoran homeworld, such people would be quietly moved to isolated facilities and forgotten. Here, families came to visit every day. Young people volunteered to spend time with them. There was music and laughter. This makes no sense, Seraphis said. These people can contribute nothing. Why do you spend so many resources on them? Elias stopped walking. He looked at her with an expression she could not read. "'Cause they're people," he said. "They lived lives. They raised families. They built things and loved things and mattered. Just because they're old doesn't erase all that. We take care of them because that's what you do. You don't throw people away when they stop being useful." His words hit her like a physical blow. You don't throw people away. But that was exactly what her people did. That was what her father had done to her. "Come on," Elias said, his voice softer now. "There's someone I want you to meet." He led her to a small room. An old woman sat by the window, looking out at a garden. Her hair was white and thin. Her hands shook when she moved them. "Gran," Elias said, "I brought a friend." The old woman turned. Her eyes were milky with age, but her smile was bright. "Eli, you finally came to see me. Sit down. Sit down. Who is this beautiful person?" Seraphis was surprised. No human had called her beautiful before. Most seemed frightened by her crystalline appearance. "This is Seraphis," Elias said. "She's a diplomat from the Valoran Empire." An alien princess. How wonderful. The old woman reached out and took Seraphise's hand. Her grip was weak, but warm. Welcome to our little planet, dear. I hope my grandson is treating you well. Seraphis looked at Elias. Grandson? Gran raised me after my parents died, Elias said. She's the reason I'm anything at all. They stayed for 2 hours. Gran told stories about Elias as a child. She asked Seraphis about her home and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. When they left, the old woman hugged Seraphis. It was the first time anyone had hugged her in centuries. Walking back to the vehicle, Seraphis was quiet for a long time. She has no children of her own, Elias said finally. Never could. Doctors said it was impossible. She adopted my father when he was a baby. She built a whole family from nothing but love and stubbornness. Seraphis stopped walking. She is like me. She is what my people would call hollow. I guess so. But she's the best person I've ever known. She taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you when loving you is hard. Something shifted in Seraphis's heart. A wall she had built long ago began to crack as more weeks passed. She found herself seeking out Elias's company even when there were no diplomatic duties. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. He made her laugh, something she had not done since childhood. He told her stories about human history, about people who had changed the world without ever having children. There was a woman named Florence Nightingale, he said one evening. They were sitting on a balcony, watching the sun set over the city. She never married, never had kids. But she invented modern nursing. She saved millions of lives. Millions more after she died because of what she built. And she is remembered? Remembered? She's a legend. Every nurse in human space knows her name. Seraphis thought about this. On her world, Florence Nightingale would have been sent to the outer colonies. She would have died in obscurity. Her brilliance would have been wasted because her womb did not function. Your people measure worth differently, she said. You measure worth by what you do, what you create, how you treat others. Elias looked at her. Not by what your body can or can't make. I think I am beginning to understand. She paused. I think I am beginning to prefer your way. Elias smiled. In the fading light, he looked younger. You know what I think? I think you would have been amazing no matter where you were born. Your people just couldn't see it. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Elias was looking at her now. She realized, with sudden clarity, that she loved him. Not because he could give her children, not because of politics or strategy. She loved him because he saw her. He saw who she really was, and he did not look away. Elias, she said quietly. Yeah, I do not want to go home now. He reached out and took her hand. His skin was warm against her crystal fingers. Then don't. They sat together as the stars came out. For the first time in her life, Seraphis felt like she belonged somewhere. The message from her father arrived 3 days later. A suitable partner had been found for her. Duke Vetherin of the Ninth House was willing to accept a hollow bride in exchange for political favors. She was to return home immediately for the bonding ceremony. Seraphis read the message twice. Then she deleted it. She spent the night composing her response. She wrote it 7 times before she was satisfied. The final version was short and clear. Father, I will not return. I will not bond with Duke Vetherin. I have chosen my own partner. His name is Commander Elias Vance of the Human Coalition. He is not Valoran. He cannot give me children. I do not care. He has shown me that my worth is not determined by my fertility. I formally request permission to take him as my consort. She sent the message before she could change her mind. 3 star systems away, in the Crystal Palace of the Valoran homeworld, King Athean received his daughter's declaration. He read it once. Then he read it again. His ancient hands began to shake. His advisors watched in horror as cracks spread across the king's face. His fury was so great that his own body could not contain it. Bring me my fleet, the king said. His voice was ice and fire. My daughter has forgotten who she is. I will remind her. The message had traveled across the empire within hours. Everyone knew. The Hollow Princess had rejected a proper Valoran bond. She had chosen a human, a primitive, an animal that lived for less than a century. Some were disgusted. Some were angry. But in the shadows, in the quiet corners where the forgotten gathered, some began to whisper something else. They whispered that maybe, just maybe, the princess was brave. They whispered that maybe she was right. The Valoran fleet arrived in the new Meridian system like a storm of crystal and light. 12 warships, each one larger than a human city. They hung in orbit like angry gods, blocking out the stars. Seraphis stood at the window of her quarters and watched them arrive. Her heart was pounding, but she did not let her fear show. Behind her, Elias was getting dressed in his formal uniform. "You don't have to come," she said. "This is my battle." Elias walked up beside her and looked at the ships. "When you love someone, their battles become yours. That's how it works." She turned to face him. "He will try to destroy you. He will say terrible things. I've been yelled at before. Usually by people much shorter than an ancient alien king." He smiled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Whatever happens, we face it together." That was the deal. The message came through. The king had landed. He was waiting in the diplomatic hall. They walked together through the human streets. People stopped and stared. Everyone knew what was happening. Human soldiers lined the route, standing at attention. They were there to honor Seraphis, to show her that she was not alone. She had not asked them to come. They had chosen to. The diplomatic hall was a large building made of white stone and glass. Inside, King Atheon stood at the center of the room. He was wearing his formal armor, crystal plates that had been worn by Valoran rulers for 8,000 years. 6 of his personal guards flanked him. His chief advisor, Keth, stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. Seraphis entered the hall with Elias at her side. She walked until she was 10 feet from her father. Then she stopped and bowed her head, but she did not kneel. She would never kneel to him again. "Daughter," the king said. The word was cold. "Father, you have shamed our house. You have rejected a proper bond. You have attached yourself to a creature that will die before you finish your morning meditation." He looked at Elias with pure disgust. "This is your choice? This soft, temporary thing?" Seraphis lifted her chin. "Yes, he is my choice. He cannot give you children. I cannot have children. You know this. You told me I was worthless because of it. You could have had purpose. Duke Vetherin would have given you position, comfort, a role in society. Instead, you choose to waste yourself on something that will be dead in 50 years. Elias stepped forward. Permission to speak. The king's eyes widened. No one interrupted him. No one dared. "You do not have permission to breathe in my presence, animal. I'm going to speak anyway." Ilias's voice was calm and steady. "Your Majesty, I've listened to you insult your daughter for 10 minutes. I've read the messages you sent her. I've seen how your people treat her. And I have to say, with all respect, you're wrong. About everything?" The guards moved forward. The king raised a hand to stop them. His face showed shock. No one had spoken to him like this in 1,000 years. "Your daughter is brilliant," Elias continued. "She learns faster than anyone I've ever met. She cares about people. She asks questions that make everyone around her think harder. In 6 months, she's done more for human Valoran relations than your professional diplomats did in 20 years. She is hollow. She has no value." "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Elias shook his head. "On my world, we have a woman who never had children. She discovered a cure for a disease that was killing millions. We have men who never had children who built ships that took us to the stars. Having kids doesn't make you valuable. What you do makes you valuable. How you treat people makes you valuable. And your daughter? She's more valuable than you'll ever understand." The king's face cracked with fresh lines of fury. "You dare lecture me? You who will be dust before my next birthday?" "Yeah, I do. Because someone needs to." Elias looked at Seraphis. "She's not worthless. She never was. You just couldn't see past your own traditions long enough to notice." For a long moment, no one moved. The air itself seemed frozen. Then King Atheon spoke. His voice was ice. Seraphis Velcora, you are hereby stripped of your name and title. You are no longer my daughter. You are no longer Valoran. You are hollow without house, a being with no family, no history, no future. You will receive nothing from the Empire. You will own nothing. You will be nothing. Stripped of name, no longer his daughter. Everything she had been was gone. But then she felt Ilias's hand find hers. His fingers wrapped around her crystal ones. He was warm and solid and real. I accept your judgment, Seraphis said. Her voice did not shake. I choose exile. I choose humanity. I choose love over legacy. The king stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes. For just a moment, he looked like an old man who had lost something precious. Then the moment passed, and his face became stone again. We are finished here. He turned and walked out of the hall. His guards followed. Keth lingered for a moment, looking at Seraphis with an expression she could not read. Then he too was gone. The Valoran fleet left orbit 3 hours later. They did not look back. That night, Seraphis sat alone on the balcony of her quarters. She had stopped crying. She was empty, but it was a strange kind of empty. Like a room that had been cleared of old furniture to make space for something new. Her communication device buzzed. A message. Then another. Then hundreds. She opened them with trembling hands. They were from Valorans. From across the Empire. From people she had never met. Thank you for being brave, one said. I am hollow too. I thought I was alone. We give us hope, said another. Maybe we are not worthless after all. The king is wrong. Many of us believe this. We are just afraid to speak. Message after message. Thousands of them by morning. The hollow, the forgotten, the discarded. They had seen what she did. They had heard what Elias said. And they were waking up. Seraphis read every message. When Elias found her at sunrise, she was still reading, tears streaming down her crystal face. What's wrong? He asked. She looked up at him and smiled. Nothing is wrong. Everything is changing. I am not alone. We are not alone. She showed him the messages. He read them in silence. Looks like you started something, he said finally. We started something, she corrected. You and me. Together. He sat down beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. They watched the sun rise over New Meridian, over their new home. Over the beginning of something neither of them could fully understand yet, but they both knew it was important. They both knew it would change everything, the messages. It kept coming. Every day, more Valorans reached out to Seraphis. Some were hollow like her. Others were fertile, but had watched their hollow friends and family members be cast aside. All of them were tired of the old ways. A young historian named Teleth contacted her with shocking news. He had been researching the Empire's archives, documents that were supposed to be sealed. What he found changed everything. The birth rate decline, he said through the communication screen. It did not happen naturally. It started exactly when the Empire began excluding the hollow from positions of power. Seraphis leaned forward. What do you mean? 3,000 years ago, hollow citizens were scientists, artists, philosophers. They could not have children, so they devoted their lives to other things. They invented new technologies. They created works of beauty. They pushed the Empire forward. Let's voice shook with emotion. Then the laws changed. The hollow were removed from universities, banned from government, forbidden from holding property. Within 200 years, our genetic diversity collapsed. The very thing we did to protect our bloodlines is what destroyed them. The truth spread like fire through dry grass. Valoran scientists compared notes with human geneticists. The humans were not surprised. It's basic biology, said Dr. Sarah Chen, a human researcher who had dedicated her career to studying alien reproduction. When you limit who can breed with whom, you reduce genetic diversity. Reduce it enough, and the whole system starts to fail. Your people didn't become infertile because of bad luck. You became infertile because you threw away anyone who was different. Seraphis shared this information with everyone who would listen. The Hollow community grew bolder. They began calling themselves the Awakened. They demanded change. They demanded rights. They demanded to be seen as people again. But not everyone was happy about this. The noble houses that had profited from Hollow labor were furious. The religious leaders who had taught that fertility was divine favor felt threatened. King Atheon watched his empire tremble and did nothing. He was old and tired and could not admit that everything he believed was wrong. Then something unexpected happened. Crown Prince Valdris, the king's eldest surviving son, made a public statement. He stood before the Imperial Council and spoke words that had never been spoken by anyone in his position. "My sister Seraphis was right," he said. "Our treatment of the Hollow is not just cruel, it is destroying us. I support her philosophy. I call for reform." The council erupted in chaos. Some members stood and applauded. Others shouted in anger. But the seed had been planted in the heart of power itself. King Atheon summoned his son to the throne room that night. No one knows exactly what was said, but Valdris emerged 3 hours later with his head held high and his resolve unchanged. "My father is afraid," the prince told his supporters. "He is afraid that if the Hollow have value, then his whole life has been based on a lie. He cannot face that. But we must face it. We must change." Across the empire, Valorans began to take sides. Some supported the old ways. Others supported the Awakened. Arguments turned into protests. Protests turned into demonstrations. The ancient stability of Valoran society cracked down the middle, and through it all, Seraphis received an invitation that shocked her to her core. The Imperial Council wanted her to speak, not as a princess. She had no title anymore. They wanted her to speak as a private citizen. As the woman who had started a revolution without even trying, as the voice of the Hollow, she could bring one person with her. She chose Elias. "Are you sure?" he asked. "This is your world. Your fight. I'm just a human." "You are the reason I found my courage," Seraphis said. "You showed me what it means to value someone for who they are, not what they can produce. If I go back with you, or I do not go at all." The journey to the Valoran homeworld took 2 weeks. Seraphis spent most of that time preparing. She wrote speeches and threw them away. She practiced arguments and forgot them. Nothing seemed good enough. On the last night before they arrived, Elias found her pacing in her cabin. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," he said. "I do not know what to say. How do I convince an entire civilization that everything they believe is wrong?" Elias sat down and thought for a moment. "You don't convince them. You show them. Tell them what you saw in New Meridian. Tell them about Gran. Tell them about Florence Nightingale and all the childless humans who changed history. Tell them the truth about what happened to your people, and then let them decide for themselves. What if they do not listen? Then you tried. That's all anyone can do." He smiled. "But I think they'll listen. You're pretty hard to ignore." The shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the Valoran homeworld. Seraphis looked out the window at the crystal cities below. She had grown up here. She had been happy here once, before she understood what being hollow meant. Now she was returning as a different person. A better person. Elias took her hand as they landed. "Ready?" he asked. "Humans taught me something," she said. "You do not have to be born with purpose. You can make it. That's my girl." The doors opened. They walked out together into the light of an alien sun. The Imperial Council was waiting. The king was waiting. The whole empire was watching. Seraphis did not know if she would succeed. She did not know if anything would change. But she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer afraid. She had been thrown away, and a human had found her. He had shown her that being discarded did not make you worthless. It made you free. Now she would share that freedom with everyone who was willing to listen. The Imperial Council chamber was the largest room Seraphis had ever seen. 1,000 Valorans sat in rising tiers of crystal seats. Every noble house was represented. Every faction, every philosophy, or every corner of the empire had sent someone to witness this moment. At the highest point sat King Atheon. His face was unreadable. Beside him, Prince Valdris gave Seraphis a small nod of encouragement. Seraphis walked to the center of the chamber. Elias stood at the edge of the room, watching. She could feel his support like a warm light at her back. "I am Seraphis," she began. Her voice carried clearly through the silent hall. "I have no house. I have no title. According to our laws, I am no one. But I am here because millions of no one sent me. The hollow, the forgotten, the thrown away. I speak for them." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I grew up believing what you believe, that fertility is worth, that the hollow are failures, that our only purpose is to continue our bloodlines. When I learned I could not have children, I wanted to die. I thought my life was over." Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, listening intently. "Then I went to live among humans, and I learned something that changed everything." She told them about New Meridian, about the hospitals that saved everyone, not just the useful, about the schools that taught everyone, not just the fast learners, about Gran, the old woman who could not have children, but raised a family anyway, about Elias, who loved her not because of what she could give him, but because of who she was. "The humans have a different way of measuring worth," Seraphis said. "They ask not what your body can produce, but what your mind can create, what your heart can feel, what your hands can build. A childless human scientist saved millions of lives. A childless human teacher shaped generations of students. They are not worthless. They are heroes." She looked directly at her father. "We Valorans have been dying for 3,000 years. We blamed the universe. We blamed fate. We blamed the hollow. But the truth is simpler and more terrible. We did this to ourselves. When we threw away our hollow citizens, we threw away our future. Our scientists, our artists, our philosophers. We starved our own culture and wondered why it withered." The chamber buzzed with whispers. Seraphis raised her voice. "I am not here to destroy our traditions. I am here to save them. Our ancestors built an empire that lasted 10,000 years. They did not do it by throwing away their children. They did it by using every gift, every talent, every mind. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. We became obsessed with one kind of value and blind to all others." She took a deep breath. "I stand before you today with a human at my side. He will live less than a century. He cannot give me children. By our old standards, he is worthless. But he taught me to hope again. He showed me that love is not a transaction. He proved that worth is not something you are born with. It is something you choose to see in each other." Seraphis fell silent. The chamber was quiet. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then King Atheon stood. Every eye turned to him. He was ancient, his crystal form cracked with age and anger. He had ruled for 3,000 years. He had sent his own daughter into exile. Whatever he said next would shape the future of the empire. Slowly, heavily, the king descended from his throne. He walked down the long stairs, step by step, until he stood before Seraphis. Father and daughter faced each other for the first time since she had been cast out. "I have lived a long time," Atheon said. His voice was rough. "I have done many things I believed were right. I have made laws. I have fought wars. I have buried children." He paused. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. "I have never admitted I was wrong. I have never apologized. I was taught that kings do not bend." He looked at his daughter, and there were tears on his ancient face. "But I was also taught that the hollow had no value, and here you stand. Stronger than I have ever been, braver than I could ever be, loved by millions who see in you what I was too blind to see." The king fell to his knees. The crowd gasped. No Valoran king had ever knelt to anyone. "I was wrong," Atheon said. "I was so afraid of our extinction that I forgot how to live. I threw away my own daughter because I could not see past my fear." Looked up at Seraphis. "Teach us. Teach us what the humans taught you. Teach us how to be whole again." Seraphis knelt down to meet her father's eyes. She took his hands in hers. "Then we begin today," she said. "We begin by changing everything. The reforms started that very month. Laws against the hollow were struck down. Schools opened their doors to everyone. The word hollow itself was abolished, replaced with a new term that meant different gift. Human doctors worked with Valoran scientists. They developed programs to increase genetic diversity, not through control but through freedom. Valorans were allowed to bond with whoever they chose, regardless of fertility status. Within a generation, birth rates began to stabilize. Seraphis and Elias were bonded in a ceremony attended by thousands. It was not a breeding partnership. It was something new, something the Valorans had never had a word for. The humans called it marriage. The Valorans eventually called it soul choice. It meant promising yourself to someone not because of what they could give you, but because of who they were. Years passed, decades. Elias grew old, as humans do. His hair turned white, his face lined with wrinkles. His body grew weak, but his mind stayed sharp, and his love never faded. On the day he died, Seraphis sat beside his bed in the Imperial Palace. She was still young by Valoran standards. She would live for thousands more years. He had given her less than 50. "No regrets," Elias whispered. His voice was barely a breath. "Not one. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." "You saved me," Seraphis said. "You showed me I was worth saving." He smiled one last time. "You were always worth saving. I just helped you see it." He closed his eyes and did not open them again. Seraphis mourned him for a long time, but she did not mourn alone. The whole empire honored the human who had helped spark their rebirth. Schools were named after him. His words were taught to children. He became a legend, and Seraphis continued his work. She helped found orphanages across the empire, places where unwanted children were raised with love. She adopted a daughter of her own, a little Valoran girl whose parents had died in an accident. She named her Eliza, a Valoran version of a human name. One evening, many years later, Seraphis sat on a balcony of the palace and watched Eliza play in the garden below. Human and Valoran children ran together, laughing, their differences forgotten, and old memories surfaced. Elias sitting beside her on another balcony, on another world, asking if she was ready. She smiled. "Ready?" she thought. "I am finally ready. For all of it, for the grief and the joy and everything in between, because humans had taught her something wonderful. Worth is not something you are born with. It is something you build day by day, choice by choice. With everyone you love, and love, real love, does not die. It just changes form. It becomes gardens where children play. It becomes laws that protect the weak. It becomes a galaxy slowly learning that every life matters, not because of what it can produce, but because it exists." Seraphis closed her eyes and let the sun warm her crystal skin. Somewhere, she knew Elias was still with her, and together, they had changed everything.